Good afternoon, everybody. So welcome to Thursday. Hi, Adriana. We'll be working today with Act 3 and 4. I think we'll talk about Act 3 first, and then we'll talk a little bit about Paper 1, and then we'll come back and talk about Act 4, assuming we have time to do that this afternoon. I'm still in the process of grading the week 2 exercises, so thank you for that work. It's I'm enjoying reading it. So just be on the lookout for some feedback. Are there questions before we get started with the work for today? Okay, so let's take a look at Act 3, Scene 1. I guess I better pull it up on the computer here. Okay, so this is the moment of truth, right? The conspirators have been working on their plot. Caesar has been lured out of the house, right, against his wife's advice. You know, he's got to be a man, so he's got to go to the Senate today. So here we go, right? So Caesar's there. He's warned again by the soothsayer, and Artemidorus attempts to give him a document that warns him, but he just is deaf to the guidance from others. The conspirators are a little bit afraid that maybe they've been found out, but that doesn't happen. And then essentially they move in for the kill. And you can see by the time we get to, let's see, right, they're trying to petition. They're kneeling because they're pretending to petition Caesar for this or that. And then you notice right here, we have action, right, in the description of the scene. And they all stab him, right? So often this is portrayed with a whole ring of people around him, using knives to stab the body. His famous line is here, et tu Brute, right, which means, and you Brutus, like he calls Brutus out of all the conspirators, you know, as being particularly having a sense of betrayal of this friend that has been with him for so long. So, and then he says, then fall Caesar, right? If it's Brutus, right, I don't want to live anymore, right? So then he dies. We have a great, for an actor, you know, a great scene, a death scene. You know, if you really want to ham it up, this is the moment to do that. And then the conspirators are drenched in Caesar's blood, right, which is very symbolic. All right, I want to spend most of the class today on the speeches that are delivered by Brutus and Antony after the death of Caesar. Thanks, Senheshki. Yeah, any salad can be Caesar if you stab it 23 times. I'm going to remember that next time I order Caesar salad. Great. Okay, so I'm going to scroll down toward the end of this scene because I do want to, the conspirators are standing around trying to figure out what to do next, right? They have blood on their hands, literally. And then Antony asks to come and see them, right? And Brutus has convinced the conspirators not to kill Antony. So they're trying to decide what to do about Antony, and he wants to come and talk to them. So I just want to take a look at a little bit of Antony's dialogue. Maybe a couple sections here of it. Let me see. So I'm gonna read, and you can just follow along and enjoy some of this language. Right, so Antony comes in and he sees the conspirators, right? He sees Caesar's dead body. He sees all these bloody guys. He's risking his life, obviously, coming back to have a conversation with them. And the first thing he does is address Caesar. "O mighty Caesar, dost thou lie so low? Are all thy conquest glories, triumphs, spoils shrunk to this little measure? Fare thee well. I know not, gentlemen, what you intend. Who else must be let blood? Who else is rank?" Right? So he's thinking of himself, right? I don't know what the next steps for you guys are. If I myself, right, if it's me, there is no hour so fit as Caesar's death hour, nor no instrument of half that worth as those your swords made rich with the most noble blood of all this world, right? So he's kind of like, well, if I have to die, now is a good time, right? He says, "I do beseech you, if you bear me hard, now whilst your purpled hands do reek and smoke, fulfill your pleasure," right? Go ahead and do it. "Live 1,000 years, I shall not find myself so apt to die. No place will please me, so no mean of death as here by Caesar and by you cut off, the choice and master spirits of this age." Right, so Antony is in, mourning for Caesar. He just wants them to go ahead and kill him, but Brutus doesn't want to do that, right? Because Brutus is trying to skate this line between regicide, was what he almost did, or treason, murder of his friend. He's trying to keep that in the category of right, that was the right thing to do. Okay, so and Brutus is kind of like, yeah, if you knew what we have been, why we did it, you would totally support us, right? So there's a lot of dialogue there around that act. I'm scrolling down now to the scene, to the end of the scene. So Antony has secured a promise from Brutus that he'll be able to address the masses at the funeral. And Brutus says, yeah, you can do that. I have to be the one to go first, right? So they've planned all this stuff out. And then they leave Antony alone with Caesar's body. So again, here's some language of Antony's, right? He's alone. This is a soliloquy, right? So he's alone on stage. He's addressing the body of Caesar. "Oh, pardon me, thou bleeding piece of earth, that I am meek and gentle with these butchers," right? Like, I have to get along with these guys for the moment. "Thou art the ruins of the noblest man that ever lived in the tide of times. Woe to the hand that shed this costly blood. Over thy wounds now I do prophesy, which like dumb mouths do ope their ruby lips to beg the voice and utterance of my tongue. A curse shall light upon the limbs of men. Domestic fury and fierce civil strife shall cumber all the parts of Italy. Blood and destruction shall be so in use, and dreadful objects so familiar, that mothers shall but smile when they behold their infants quartered with the hands of war. All pity choked with custom of fell deeds, and Caesar's spirit ranging for revenge, with 8 by his side, come hot from hell, shall in these confines with the monarch's voice cry havoc and let slip the dogs of war. That this foul deed shall smell above the earth with carrion men groaning for burial," right? So he's predicting that this is going to lead to a huge amount of violence, which of course he's right about. So, okay, so questions or comments regarding the scene where Caesar is taken down? Feel free to contribute to the chat if you don't want to talk.
I just thought the part where they're like justifying killing him, and specifically, I just thought it was sort of funny how they're talking about, oh, if we cut off 20 years of his life, that's like saving him 20 years of death anxiety. So we're doing him a favor.
Right. They're trying to rationalize their actions, and increasingly they can't do it. Betsy, do you have comments about the scene where Caesar is killed? Any thoughts? Yeah, I think they're trying, you know, they're trying to use reason. They're trying to suggest, they're trying to make their consciences clear. And I think it gets harder and harder for them. Yeah, any other thoughts? Okay, so we're going to spend most of our time today taking a look at these two speeches that are in Act 3, Scene 2. And let me give you some line numbers. Again, I'm just going to share my screen while I pick these out. So I'm going to be asking you to work in groups, and I'll give you either Brutus's speech or Antony's speech from Act 3, Scene 2. And just to talk through some of the, the reasoning, like, now they not only have to explain their actions to themselves and their consciences, but they have to explain it to people out in the world. Okay, so whoops, let me go on to the next scene here. So if you are working with Brutus's speech, both speeches begin similarly, so you'll be able to tell. Here, Brutus around line 14 says, Romans, countrymen, lovers, right? So we're going from line 14 through the end of Brutus's address to the people. And let's see, let me scroll down. It's about line 60. Yeah, there's some conversation, right? So there's some interaction with the crowd. And then there's the end, right? He descends from where he's speaking. And this is around line 67. Okay, now let's go find Antony, right? So if you're working with Antony today, he comes up right after Brutus, right? And he begins very similarly. So this is line 82. And his is a little bit longer because he has more information to deliver. And there's more interaction with the crowd. So again, you might, skip some of the crowd discussion and just focus on Antony's words. So again, I'm going to scroll down until where we see Antony. Let's see. That's around line 265. Yeah. Okay, yeah, about this area, about 276. So there's a lot to work with for Antony. Okay, let me stop share for a second. Yeah, thanks, Ellie, for posting to the chat. Right, she says, when I saw this play performed, it really struck me hard because when he was stabbed, he was killed in a chair and the blood soaked through the chair and was spilt out over the floor, right? Yeah, I mean, he's stabbed so many times that it would be surprising for blood not to flow freely in that scene. Yeah, and it's a little alarming to see that acted out. Okay, great. So let's see. So I'm going to create some groups and give you about 10 minutes. And let me go ahead and type the prompts into the chat. I will also remind you when you get in the groups. So what I'm particularly interested in is how these guys set up their arguments. So you might think about their rhetorical strategies. And if you've had a rhetoric class, you may know that the key strategies are emotion, logic, and credibility, which has to do with their either their own credibility as to speak, their own authority to speak, right? Their own character. Or if they're referring to other people, the good character of other people. You might also think about irony, because we could argue that Antony's speech is incredibly ironic, even sarcastic. So those are the things I want you to look for, and maybe pick out a couple sections that we could talk about as a class that indicate the way in which this person is making his argument. Okay, are there questions about what I'm asking you to look at? And when I get you in the groups, I'll indicate which groups are doing Brutus and which are doing Antony. Okay. So we'll have 10 minutes and there'll be that 60-second wind down once the group is done talking. What I'd like you to do is pick someone who can speak for your group about what your group talked about. So somebody who's willing to listen and then report out. So I'd like to have the rooms 1 and 2 do Brutus and the rooms 3 and 4 do Antony. Okay, any questions before we go ahead and get started on that? Okay, so once you get started, I will type the question in again. Thanks, Jasmine. And I'll also put the line numbers in case you need them. Okay, so I'll see you in just a bit.
Did you already send out the thing for me to go to the breakout room?
Hold on, let me see, Jasmine. It might have kicked you out. I might have set it up while you were in transition there. Give me just a sec. Okay, let me get you in a room. Okay, should be ready to go.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think we're all back. Let's hear first from the groups that dealt with Brutus. Does the room 1 have a spokesperson?
Were we group 1 or 2?
You're group 1.
Okay, Ellie.
Okay, I'm sorry, I wasn't quite sure.
I thought we were 2.
So I'm sorry, I just want to look at the chat so I can cover all the portions. So when looking into further details about Brutus's speech, you have the sense of kind of a sad more emotion. And, he relies on the logic of him knowing Brutus and a lot of that information, which establishes credibility, which he really probably shouldn't have because it's all lies. But if you've read a lot about it, from what I understand, Brutus was like a son to Caesar. So that's another what makes it so difficult and hard. And if you look through his speech, he repeats the word honor a whole lot. And it's given the presence that he is trying to make him feel better about the whole situation. Not that he's really trying to convince people that he is, but I feel like the focus is more, I did the right thing, it's okay, I did what was best. And this whole speech is kind of ironic because he's showing emotion of sadness, yet he's the person who caused it. And just even his credibility is called into question because I feel like you really destroy your credibility when you murder someone. So I think his is just I think it's a very heartbreaking moment. I think it kind of establishes what happens later of the mental breakdown of Brutus. And I think it's just kind of interesting to see the progression from this point forward.
Great. Thanks, Ellie. Thanks, group 1. How about group 2? Or room 2?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, thanks, Dakota.
All right. We were mostly talking about that same thing, how he was appealing to them, but we were kind of surprised at how effective it was on the crowd. Like they really kind of ate it up. And so there's, questions about that. But yeah, he really like leaned heavily on the honor that he had with Caesar, which as was discussed, like seems it like shouldn't have lasted beyond the act of murder. So yeah, it really does seem like it's almost strange that the crowd believed it, but it's like they knew that if they were like honest and they like covered themselves in the blood and they were like, yeah, we did it. It's almost like they knew that the people would give them at least like their day in court. There seems to be like a lot of trust of that process, that system of like the democracy, of Rome. So interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. Right. So this is that idea that right, that he's turning it over to the masses to kind of like agree, right, to hold up his line of thinking. Yeah. Which suggests a democracy, right? That the people's voices matter. And he definitely even calls them out right at the beginning. Yeah, this is this speech is really interesting. I want to say in some ways it's about Brutus more than it is about what Brutus chose to do, right? Believe me, right? Because I'm honorable. Right, yeah, censure me in your wisdom, right? If you decide, you look at the evidence and decide, but he doesn't really give them a whole lot of evidence, right? He just indicates that that he loved Rome. Okay. Right, and then he gives a kind of like either or scenario. Either Caesar's alive and you're slaves, or Caesar's dead and you're free. Which is not the, not necessarily the only set of options. Yeah, good. Okay, let's hear from the groups that did Antony. And given that this section is so long, maybe you could indicate when you talk which part you want us to look at. Okay, and I can pull it up. So how about group 3?
Hi.
Hi.
So we did the first chunk of lines 82 through 92. So the way that Antony addresses the crowds as friends, Romans, and countrymen differs from Brutus, because he doesn't address them as friends, he addresses them as lovers, which is a little odd. That they're both trying to create the sense that everyone's in this together. It's a republic. It's not. Caesar's in charge. But that Antony is trying to plead for Julius's humanity in this moment, that to everyone, Julius Caesar has come to embody Roman fault, that he is, the puppet of Rome, that he has become this figurehead for all of its problems, but he's saying he's a human, and when he dies, he's going to die a second death, that everything good that he's ever done dies with him, that you're only going to remember him for the bad things. And he's asking so he says in line, let's see, it's 85. So let it be with Caesar, the noble Brutus hath told you Caesar was ambitious. If it were so, it was a grievous fault, and grievously hath Caesar answered it. But he's saying this man gave his life for this. All I want is for him to be remembered for the good things he did as a human. And in turn, Marcus is asking for everyone to remember the senators for the bad things they have done, since that's how Caesar will be remembered. Caesar brought about the end of a 400-year-old republic by becoming a dictator. So fair enough, it's the trolley problem in action. Do you sacrifice this one person that you do consider your friend, your countryman, and a fellow Roman for the sake of all of Rome?
Great, thanks, Sanheshki. Yeah, nice discussion. Okay, so how about group 4?
We forgot to set up a specific person, so I'll go ahead and go.
Okay, thank you.
We pretty much said the same exact thing that Shahesky said, almost to a T.
And were there particular lines that your group was looking at?
I can't remember the line number, but he said weep. And we focused on that word a lot. We thought it was really, really powerful and a good way to bring in the emotion of the people.
Right, right. And was the word, I'm sorry, was the word weak?
Weep.
Weep. Oh,
Like,
yeah.
yeah.
I'm just going to see if I can find it. Let's see. Oh. Right, and there is some weeping going on there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. When that the poor have cried, Caesar hath wept, right? So Caesar wept with people. Yeah, and I want to come back to the word honorable, right? Because that occurs in both speeches. Yeah, and then, right, so we have the repetition of that Brutus is an honorable man line. And then we get down to, you all did love him once, not without cause, right? What cause withholds you then to mourn for him, right? And then he weeps in front of everybody, right? So here's this powerful man sort of modeling how one is supposed to react to the death of somebody they care about or admire. Yeah, my heart is in the coffin there with Caesar. Yeah, right, which shows he's human and emotional, you know, he's responding to emotion. Yeah, nice discussion going on in the chat. Right, so Sanheshki's saying that obviously the word honorable has been used throughout. And I think you're right, Sanheshki, he's questioning Brutus's honor by raising that idea over and over again and contrasting it with the things that Brutus is actually doing. Yeah, yeah. And I like the trolley analogy too, right? Yeah, can somebody, I don't know if everybody knows what that means. Sanheshki, do you want to say a little bit about that image?
Yes, sorry, 1 second. So the trolley analogy or problem is, so you have 2 tracks set up, you're set up as the switch master, and you have to decide if you are if you're willing to let this trolley run over 1 person or 5 people. Now here's the difference. The 1 person is someone you know. The 5 people are 5 random strangers. And as much as everyone loves to draw the trolley problem and just say, stop the train, you can't. You have to let it run over someone. And it can either be the 1 person that you love or 5 complete strangers, but then you have to realize that by taking 1 life, you're saving 5. By killing 5 people, you're saving 1, and you're choosing it selfishness. There is no correct answer to this.
Right. It's a dilemma that can't be resolved, right? You're going to be guilty either way.
So depending on which view of philosophy you take, you either take, a higher path, a selfish path, and for most people, they just walk away from it because it is so outdated and horrible.
Yeah. Thank you. Great, great. Okay, so right, so we've got these 2 guys going at it. Yeah, that's right, Jordan. It calls on the ethics of a person, right? So Brutus in his speech is trying to set out what his ethics are, right? That Rome is more important than a single guy, and so he's picking the 5, even though he loves Caesar. And Antony is trying to call that into question, right? That how honorable could you be given what we know about Caesar? And he goes on to talk about, right, that Caesar, wept with people, that Caesar was, right, like he brings to life the kind of dead body of Caesar and Caesar's wounds, the fact these guys are bathed in blood, right? that Caesar loved people. And he kind of holds the masses accountable for switching to Brutus's side when they had just been cheering Caesar for his victory over, what's the guy's name? Begins with a P. Anyway, it's just lost it. Right, so then he
Pompey.
Pompey, thank you. Yes. Okay, right. So so again, he runs through all of his thinking, right? The well-beloved Brutus stabbed, and he plucked his cursed steel away. Mark how the blood of Caesar flowed. Trying to get people to see the right, the tragedy that this is. He goes on to talk about the idea that Caesar has a will, right? That he wants to give people some public land, I think. And so he comes back to that as a way of suggesting how generous Caesar is. Yeah, Rosa, I saw you pop on. Do you want to add to the conversation? Okay, great. Okay, so Antony is kind of like gradually building Caesar back up while tearing Brutus down. So we can think about him attacking Brutus's credibility, right? So Brutus seems to rely on his own credibility and his own obvious honor, but Antony continually questions by repeating, well, Brutus is honorable, look what he did, he killed Caesar. Brutus is honorable, look what he did, look what Caesar was to you, and Brutus is the one who killed him. Yeah, and this has to do with the again, the will. He hath left you all his walks, his private arbors, and new planted orchards. He gave them public lands, right? So after his death. So again, he's trying to get him to think differently. Okay, so what I want to do now is talk just a little bit about the paper assignment, and I'm just going to pull it up. Because, yeah, nice, Ellie, right? That Brutus actually acted in selfishness. I kind of want to say Brutus acted hastily, you know, like, couldn't you have a conversation with Caesar before deciding to knock him off? I don't know. Like, dude, you're going down the wrong path. I guess that wasn't in the cards for them. Okay, so I just wanted to talk maybe a little bit about paper one in the context of what we've just been doing, right? So paper one is a literary analysis paper. It asks you to pick something and build an argument of interpretation around it. So one thing, for example, you could select is maybe one of these speeches, right? Let's take a look at Brutus's speech and what happens with Brutus's speech. Yeah, I think that, thanks, Ellie. The comparison between Cassius and Iago is a really good one, right? Because Cassius convinces Brutus to move ahead with his uncertainty about Caesar and to take action. Yeah. So the germ was there in Brutus's head, but Cassius fanned the flame, just to switch metaphors. Right, so you could come and do a paper just about Brutus's speech, right? And what's important about it, what does it show? You could do the same thing with Antony, right? So what's Antony saying by kind of mocking Brutus, and how effective, why is that effective? Because the crowd seems to be swayed by it. Right, so the paper will have an argument. It needs to be an interpretive argument, not a fact, not an observation, not an evaluation, but an interpretation, right? What's the meaning arising from the idea that Antony is repeatedly mocking Brutus? Why is that important, right? So it kind of gets at the so what of this conversation, like the interpretive stuff. And then the body paragraphs will deal with chunks of evidence. So each body paragraph will have a quote in it. The quote needs to be inside the paragraph. Like sometimes students will throw the quote between paragraphs. The quote needs to be, the first part of the paragraph needs to be you talking about the point you want to make, transitioning into the quotation, and then spending the second half of the paragraph analyzing the quotation, kind of like what we've been doing, looking at the wording, looking at how it functions, and why that evidence supports what you want to say about the section of the play you're looking at. We'll be using MLA document format, which really all that means is just the format of the paper. Let me see if I can go and grab, let me stop the screen share for just a sec and let me grab my sample. In the assignment, there is a sample paper and you can just follow that format. Oh, great. It's not coming up.